Hello and welcome to More Than the Game for Isolation TV. I'm Tony Moclair, and joining me on this weekly sports nostalgia, sports slash current sports vodcast is my co-host, the great Troy Zantuck. G'day, Troy.
Oh, Tony, it's great to be back with you, mate. Really looking forward to a half an hour of absolute mayhem.
It's a vodcast like no other. You, of course, have been heard on SEN. I'm currently on AW, so that might give you some background as to who we are. But we are on Isolation TV, just kicking the ball around, if you like, chewing the fat about the great days of sport, specifically 70s and 80s, 90s. Could go beyond that, but it depends on your perspective. All things related to sport. Let's start with a game that's very close to your heart and mine, Troy. That would be AFL VFL. And I was thinking during the week, one thing that I don't think gets enough nostalgic coverage is the huddle. It's a part of our game. It's an important part of the game. Every quarter time, 3/4 time. Of course, we don't see much of the huddle at halftime because the players are in the room. But there have been some notable incidents during huddles over the course of the last couple of decades, Troy, and I thought we might just explore that a bit on today's episode.
Absolutely, Tony. Well, let's jump in Doctor Who's TARDIS and let's head back to VFL Park. A great man, one of the greatest centre-half forwards of all time, played for the Hawks, 189 games, 427 goals, 5-day, 5-night grand finals. Who am I talking about, Tony?
Well, and also a player who played for the Swans and for Collingwood. That would be the great man Dermot.
Not to be forgotten.
No, the great man Dermot Brereton, who once pile-drived me when I commented about a shirt he was wearing. And let me tell you, he's not to be trifled with under any circumstances.
So you were acting as the fashion police on that occasion, Tony?
What's that, Troy?
You were acting as the fashion police, just having a quiet crack at Dermy's attire.
Well, you didn't do that because if you know anything about Dermy, you know he is very fashion conscious. He takes good care of himself, except on the football field where personal safety goes out the window. And I think you're about to tell us a bit about that. This would have to be, Troy, in your experience as a sports nut and a statistician of great note, would this be the most famous huddle incident?
Well, it'd be in my top two, let's say that time, but it was 1988, the year. The
Yep.
opposition were the Bombers. An absolute massive hatred between the Bombers and the Hawks. During the 80s, it was a glorious period. They played in a lot of grand finals together. But on this occasion, it was a 3/4 time huddle. Dermot Brereton had just given a free kick away prior to the 3/4 time siren against bustling Billy Duckworth, a name synonymous with Essendon hard men. He planted a kiss on the great Billy Duckworth and then proceeded to give a free kick away because Jason Dunstall had the ball in his hands lining up for goal, but it was not to be because the decision was reversed on the grounds that Dermot Brereton gave a smooch to bustling Billy, infuriated the kid Dermot Brereton, so therefore he run through the Bombers huddle at 3/4 time, causing pandemonium and mayhem.
Was it like Moses parting the Red Sea, or what? How did the Bombers react? And let me tell you, if it came to facing the wrath of either the Bombers huddle or Jason Dunstall for missing out on what I assume was a set shot goal, which he would have got easily because the man was a genius, I would have preferred the huddle.
Yeah, no, I'm going down the huddle route, Tone. You're absolutely right. And Kevin Sheedy was asked to comment on the Brereton incident after the game, and his words were, "Just another mad Irishman." So I think Kevin grudgingly enjoyed it.
Yeah. So was the huddle tightly packed as they can be as they listen to Sheedy's insane rantings, or was it kind of
Look,
more loosely gathered? And did
yeah.
Dermy have to duck and weave, or he just committed himself?
Oh no, it was Moses like. It was a parting in the Red Sea, but there was there were mixed emotions in the Essendon huddle by the look on the players' faces. It was bewilderment, it was anger, it was what the hell is this bloke on? It was
Yeah.
a roller coaster of emotion.
Well, he probably got that same approach from the dance floor of the 21st Century nightclub in Frankston, where Dermy was very good at running into packs and emerging successfully, just quietly.
Yes, it's a lovely divergence from the topic at hand, but I like it, Tone.
Yeah,
Beautifully.
yeah, right. Now,
But
there was another huddle incident, and we talked about this off air, and I was stunned as to your ability to. I was trying to dance around it. I was trying to say, now there is another huddle incident, and I was being very parsimonious with the details because I didn't want to. I didn't want to, alert you to it. But I
right,
mentioned the fact that a footy show caught this remarkable bit of footage. I think it might have been before the game or after the game. One of those eagle-eyed video watchers caught it. You know the story. This would have to be Great Huddle Incident number 2 in the VFL AFL. What is it, Troy?
yes. Well, this is a family podcast, and we've
Yeah,
got to keep, we've got to know our limitations, as Clint Eastwood said, as Dirty Harry. A man's got to know his limitations. Let's just say
true.
there was some kneeling action, and
Yes.
so some urine might have
So,
been involved.
yes, it is one of the more remarkable sights that you would see. Normally, players chomping on an orange, or coach going berserk, or
Yes.
a line coach holding up the metallic board and calmly trying to impart some strategy to his charges. But this one was um, knee taken, shorts yanked up a bit, and then a stream of bodily fluid. Because, look, on one level, you can understand it, Troy. It's a long way back to the change rooms.
It
And
is.
when you got to go, you got to go.
And sometimes discretion can be the better part of valor.
Now, as a stats man, is there a super coach stat for having a whiz on the sacred turf of the MCG?
Can't give you that stat, but I don't know whether you're trying to take the PI double five out of me there, just quietly. But it has been an art form around VFA, VFL, and AFL huddles for quite a while. So it's much a time-honoured tradition when you get caught short.
All right, I think we'll allow them that. It's just would be a very an unfortunate place to have your face planted, thanks to a robust tackle from an opposition player. If you happen to land where one of your teammates had, yeah.
But
Anyway, we won't go on.
it does give context to the players getting around each other.
Good, exactly. Thank you very much. Now, I've been on the outside of a few huddles. You would have as well, Troy. I'm taken back to the Sunraysia Football League when I was a kid growing up in Mildura.
Oh yes,
And when the Imperial Football Club, were playing at the showgrounds, I used to go with my mate Nigel. And you could stand as a kid on the outside of the huddle as all the players, this is in the 1970s, all the players are eating their oranges. The coach is just blowing a gasket. But
yes.
what I don't know if this happens in the AFL now, but what used to happen was there was always a couple of lurkers at the back of the playing group who would just be kind of grunting or shouting encouragement, like, come on, work,
Yeah.
let's get at him, that sort of thing. Or, or,
Yeah.
or would like to comment on how soft they had been during the previous quarter. Does that happen in the AFL, or is it seems a lot more sedate now?
Yeah, look, you touch on a great point. The blokes usually on the periphery of the huddle. They were they were the hand clappers. They were the urgent,
Yeah, the
urging.
urgent. That's
And they were
it.
the blokes that really didn't trouble the stat sheet at the end of the game.
Yep.
But great barricades.
That's
We
true.
we know
I
him
guess they could hold their
AFL
heads up
parlance,
high
but
saying, well, at least I contributed.
at least I
Yeah,
contributed. In AFL parlance, we know them as passengers
passengers. Thank you.
along
And
for the ride.
the uh, the other huddle I remember was when me and my brothers went to Williamstown, I think it was, to see
Yes.
Jared Waite. Jared Waite was off either injured or reported. I think I was telling you about this. David Teague was coaching at the time, and
Wow.
the great thing about the great thing about the VFL is, well, full strength beer was one.
Yeah.
Number two is supporters could just there was no problem with me just going to the edge of the huddle and listen to Teague, not give a spray, but just tell the boys because I'm pretty sure the Bull Ants weren't winning, but just tell the boys where they were getting wrong. And what I found interesting too, Troy,
Yes.
was the identification by name of opposition players, and this is going to get us on to the next point that we're going to discuss. But the naming of opposition players who had to be nullified or counted.
Yes.
And so it wasn't like if you go on YouTube, you'll see the rantings of Barassi, for example, or maybe even Malcolm Blight, and they are just popping a gasket. Teague was just a lot more kind of managerial in style, I thought, and
Yeah.
I just thought the energy of that particular huddle was really interesting.
Yeah, look, you bring up a great name, the great Ronald Dale Barassi, and I've actually got a family story here, Tony, if you're interested in Barassi, huddles, and commotion, if you'll indulge me.
The smile says it all. Please, the microphone and the floor is yours, Troy Zantuck.
Well, Tony Moclair, it was 1984, a winter's day. The Demons, who weren't travelling really well, against the Bombers, who were up and about in the early 80s, mid 80s.
Well,
It
they
was
won the premiership in '84.
it was at VFL Park,
Yep.
and Ron Barassi was at his absolute firebrand best, and my brother Shane Zantuck happened to be playing that day, and the Demons were getting absolutely flogged. And Barassi was big on players looking him in the eye. Well, the rest of the guys had their heads down, and my brother, not backward in coming forward, was eyeballing Barras, and Barras had a red hot crack at him. And as my brother's walking away from the 3/4 time huddle, he's still having a gab off at him. So my brother's turned around and gave Barras one of the best sprays I think that he's had in a long time. Some of the guys that come to my brother's rescue were Robbie Flower, the great Robbie
Oh,
Flower,
wow.
Stephen Smith, and Alan Jarrett had to pull my
Oh,
brother away because he was so hot under the collar. And Lou Richards' commentary that day was absolutely gold. He said, I don't know what Zantuck's doing. What the hell? You know, where did that come from? And next day at school, I rock up to school and I got called to the principal's office. And I'm thinking, I haven't done anything wrong this week. And he said, Troy, no, just everything's okay. He said, I just want to know what your brother said to Barassi. So
oh.
yeah, created a bit of a stir, let's say. Yeah, so that's
Can
my
you
huddle
let us
story.
in? That is magnificent. Can you tell us what your brother did say? Because the footage is amazing, and it takes about 7 blokes and a team of dray horses to drag your brother away. And
Yeah,
I can honestly say, you could search YouTube for a year and not find a single person talking back to Ronald Dale Barassi. Um, your brother is pretty much the only one. What did he say, Troy?
well, well, the story behind it, and there are many stories, but the story I actually got from my brother one night when he was happy enough to talk to me was that Barras was big on guys looking him in the eye when he was delivering
Yep.
an address or a spray. And as I said, from what I've been told, the rest of the guys just were looking at the ground. They were getting flogged by the Bombers.
Yeah.
And Shane was always big on looking, obviously, your coach in the eye. And I think Barras just took that the wrong way, that he was actually eyeballing him, not
Yep.
absorbing what he was saying. So, yeah, but the irony is that they become great friends after that incident, and regularly caught up for lunch and caught up with each other's wives, around the dinner table on many occasions. So it was all good.
No surprise there at all. I think you would earn Baras's undying respect for being able to give it back to him. He's that sort of competitor. And he's still got that fire in the belly, as you would know, Troy, as somebody who tried to steal a purse of one of his companions in St Kilda found out a couple of years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, Still a man
No,
not to be trifled with, and I love that. What an absolute legend. Now, we one of the other things we wanted to talk about on this vodcast, more than the score, Troy, was just again a look back at taggers. Now, why were they on your radar this week? It's very current and topical, I believe, Troy.
well, it is with the coronavirus, Tone, and what it's done to people on so many different levels. I was just reminiscing about the close checkers, the taggers, when we were growing up. The 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and I've touched on the Bombers quite a bit with Dermy and my brother, but they had some tremendous close checkers. One that I could remember, Kevin Sheedy made him into a tremendous player, represented his state, centre half back, ginger hair, ginger moustache, very Dickensian, the moustache with the twirl. Kevin Walsh, what a tremendous centre half back he was for the Bombers.
Okay, so Troy, just give us, for anybody who doesn't know the art of close playing or checking or tagging, just tell us what that means, and who do you rate in the game apart from Walshy? Who do you rate as being, I guess, experts at the art of tagging?
Well, the art of tagging, one of the guys who I think doesn't get enough credit was a guy who played for Collingwood called Mick Gayfer, Mickey
Okay.
Gayfer, and
Yep.
he was like the glove, and he might have two, maybe three possessions for the game, but he would lock down his opponent and annoy the Jesus out of him, absolutely torment him with his close checking, because the art of tagging, Mick Gayfer never, he was always had touch on his opponent, always. And as an opposition player, a star player, that's going to play mind games with you throughout the game, obviously, if you haven't got a strong constitution. So Mick Gayfer, I think back to the three amigos from the Bulldogs. We had Tony Liberatore, we had Paul Di Martina, and Jose Ramiro.
Yeah. Wow.
So they
Wow.
were the
What
mosquito
a
fleet
trio.
taggers, Tony.
Yeah. Well, first amongst equals there would have to be Libba, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, look, he redefined his game as a tagger, and probably got 5 years more out of what he would have got just through reinventing himself. And all credit to Libba. He just, one of those guys who wasn't blessed with, the ability of a Doug Hawkins, but the determination, 10 out of 10. He was just incredible. And
Give us some
for
example
yours,
then, Troy. Well, I'll give you my favourite ones from Carlton in a moment. They're more recent players, but um, tagging a player, is that necessarily playing from behind, or are you just you say wearing like a glove? Now, how do you do that without getting under the nose of the umpire and giving away free kicks?
yeah, but that's all about knowing the strengths and weaknesses of who you're playing on. You can play them, you can play 5 feet in front of them to cut off their lead if they're a forward.
Great. Gotcha. Yep.
You're a midfielder, obviously, you've got to have touch. You've just got to clamp them down. So
Yep.
there's different methods, and obviously in today's game, we actually have defensive forwards like a Paul
Yep.
Puopolo,
Okay. Yep.
who might shut down an attacking back pocket, but he'll bob up with goals himself. So there's just so much more variety these days, and it's just been an evolution, I think, the tagging caper.
Well, I'll give you a couple because as you know, I'm a Carlton supporter, so that's how I
Yes.
tend to basically look at football. Um, Taggers, as far as Carlton go, would be Ed Curnow, who can do a great shutdown job on players big and small. Did a great job on Dusty one year, which was a kind of
No mean
strange
feat.
physical matchup, but no mean feat at all. Another one, you mentioned Liberatore. Well, what about another Italian? We'd have to go
Yes.
Andrew Carazzo, who
Yes.
Carrots, who wore the number 44. Now, if we add number 1 to 44, we get 45. Who would
Yeah.
that be, Troy?
Oh, look, could it be the great man, Anthony Francina?
What a
Yes.
player.
Uh, and a lovely bloke too, Anthony. I've been lucky enough to meet him in my travels. Look, for annoyance, he was an 11 out of 10. He was spinal tap stuff.
I, I, I do love that the annoying lippy players who can just talk all day through a mouth guard and drive an opponent batty. I love that there's a place for them in the game. But I'm going to go one. This is a special mention. It's out of left field. It only happened, I think, last year or the year before. But he did a magnificent job of taking out Nat Fife in the game Carlton played against Freo, where Cripper was missing. I'm talking about
Yes.
Jack Silvani. He tagged Fife for I think 2 quarters. It wasn't the whole game, but it was 2 quarters. Absolutely shut him out. Now you wouldn't think Jack Silvani would have played that kind of role. And I wonder if his old man ever tagged. In your experience, Troy, do you think he did? I don't think he would have.
Steve Silvani, well,
Yeah,
obviously fullback of the century for the Blue Baggers, but early on in his career, Stephen played forward and kicked a
yeah.
lot of goals forward, and he was one of the best touch players ever to play the game. As far as he just wouldn't give you an inch, and he was the master of scragging just when the
Yep.
umpire wasn't looking. But a wonderful aerialist, and he's very smart with his ball disposal in the back line. And obviously, you know, over 300 games for the Blues, an incredible performance.
This is the sort of player he was. I brought this up a lot because it was such a heartbreaking game to watch for me and a lot of other Carlton supporters. The 93 grand final, and the end of Michael Long's run, you might
Yes.
remember, Michael Long slotted it. Sauce touched the ball, and in amongst the crowd going absolutely mental,
Yeah.
is Sauce going mental at the goal umpire who completely ignores him. Now, at that stage, I mean, 5 minutes into that game, the game was over, but Sauce would not give up. And that goal, preventing or stopping that goal or protesting that goal, uh, was absolutely vital to Sauce. I mean, that's the sort of competitor he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Not giving an inch. And I think when he came
No.
off after the grand final time, that he said that he'd broken 3 fingers through touching the ball.
Well, I'm sure David
An apocryphal
Parkin
story.
said you had another 7. Why are they still working?
A vintage
Yes,
Parker.
yes. If you're in charge of the Taggers Hall of Fame, Troy, yeah. Any others you'd like to mention?
Yeah, look, Shane Hurd from the Bombers, Sean Denham, who
Yeah. Oh
wasn't on
wow,
the
yeah.
invitation list to Greg Williams's birthday parties. Uh, there was a guy called Graham Hinchin, an 80s back pocket player from Fitzroy, who was a very,
Yep.
very handy shutdown, lockdown type of player. Cameron Ling, the talking modern day. Cameron Ling just asked
Yep.
Nathan Buckley.
Yep.
And I've got one
Oh,
from
wow.
the 1978 Premiership Hawthorn team. Now, most Hawthorn supporters love this guy. He had an unconventional kicking style. His name was David Polkinghorne. Do you remember David Polkinghorne, Tone?
I have a dim recollection of the name. Would he have played with Richard Loveridge around that time?
Yeah, Richard Loveridge was just embarking on his career.
Okay, there you
David
go.
was more a mid-70s, early 80s type of guy.
All
So
right.
number 10
Okay.
he wore for the Hawks, and
Yep.
it was a part of that 1978 Premiership team that beat North Melbourne by I think by 3 goals. A tremendous effort considering North and Hawthorn. We might talk rivalries one day, Tone, but they had some great
Oh,
rivalries
yes, please.
in the 70s.
Yes. Well, now another thing we are going to talk about in future. We're running out of time at the moment now, Troy. But can you give me the 2 sponsors of those clubs in 1978, North Melbourne and Hawthorn? Who would the sponsors have been?
Well, North Melbourne were very famous for having the sponsor Courage,
Yes. Now
the big company.
and there would have been another alcohol company supporting the Hawks at the time. Can you remember what company that
Was
was?
it Windvale Wine?
Geez, you're good. Yeah, with
Just a
the
lucky
distinctive
guess.
W. Wins, I think it was. Yeah, you're right. Now, Troy, that is definitely a topic that we are going to lovingly discuss
Yes,
in next week's podcast. That is defunct sponsors or commercial partners, if you want to call it that, to use the modern lingo, of football clubs. But we're just going to discuss some more modern news now. That being the Olympics. Of course, coronavirus has touched. Well, it's hardly left a sporting code untouched. The Olympics are no exception. And you've got some news for us on that front now, Troy.
yeah, Tone. Well, as was mentioned earlier in the week, the Tokyo Olympics have been postponed to the 23rd of July 2021. It's actually the first time in history the Olympics have been postponed rather than cancelled. The last time Tokyo held the Olympics was 64. And they've actually hosted 2 Winter Olympic Games. I think it was 72 in Sapporo and
Yep.
more recently 98 in Nagano. So they've got some, they've got some street cred as far as hosting the Olympics, but through unforeseen circumstances, they've been put back to July 2021.
Now, will there be a curtailed amount of sports on offer? Because the Olympics is metastasizing, to try to use a word to make myself sound impressive.
It's
It's just
very impressive.
growing exponentially. Every 4 years, um, there's throwing a pint glass at a dartboard has been
Yeah.
entered as a sport almost. So, will there be a contracted list of sports on offer next year at the Olympics, Troy?
Well, you would imagine so, Tone, because obviously with qualifying times and there has to be a saturation point, and obviously some interesting stats. The cost of delaying these Olympics by 1 year is US $5.8 billion. Now, if they had
Wow.
cancelled the Olympics, it would have been $41.5 billion. So, through advertising and the hosting and just they're incredible sums of money. So, 206 nations were ready to go for 2020. Just over 11,000 athletes. So it's just thrown everything into complete chaos. But I do applaud the Olympic Committee for putting it back a year. To have them in 2 or 3 months would be absolutely madness. So I think they've made the right decision.
I couldn't agree more. And Like it'll be, to be honest, after everything we've gone through in 2020, I think it could do a lot for morale in countries around the globe to see the Olympics, and it could be that kind of unifying global event that we really do need. Now,
I,
I want to point this out, Troy. As you know, Australia will be there, meaning that Australia is still one of a very select group of countries. Am I right here that has never missed an Olympic Games?
oh, Tony Moclair, you're on the ball. Absolutely spot on. Yep, have been have been there at all the Olympics. Probably they weren't there in 1976. I would maybe disagree there because at Montreal we didn't figure as far as winning a gold medal. That was our poorest, one of our poorest Olympic Games ever. And that was the catalyst for Malcolm Fraser starting the Australian Institute of Sport.
Well, you would have to say then out of the ashes of defeat has come an innumerable amount of victories. So well done, Malcolm Fraser, on that.
Yeah, big
So
Mel did
it
the
was
right
not a dead loss then.
I just want a quick one, Tone. Obviously, with the coronavirus, obviously with the postponement of these games, but if you cast your mind back not long ago to 2016 with the Rio Olympics, there was the Zika virus,
That's true. Yes.
which I believe was something to do with mosquitoes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, just an interesting parallel there.
Well, they thought at the Rio Games there was going to be a contagious outbreak of dirty dancing, which was very popular in that part of the world.
Oh,
And
magnificent.
there
Hey?
was fears that Juan Samaranch would excite the ladies too much with some promiscuous hip moving, but it didn't happen. So we dodged a bullet there.
So
Troy,
he was taking on the role of Patrick Swayze, was he, Juan Antonio?
that's right. That's right. Troy, great to have you. Well, great to have done another episode of More Than the Score. We will be back next week dissecting some more sporting nostalgia and employing the vast statistical trove that exists between the ears of one Troy Zantuck. I'm Tony Moclair, and more or less just along for the ride and just to attempt to use big words to make myself look very unimpressive.
Thank you very
Troy,
much,
great
Tony.
work.
Great doing business with you.
I look forward to doing the same business next week. We will catch you then. More than a game. No, more than a game. That's another one. More than the score. More than the score here on Isolation TV. Catch you next week.